What's going on, guys? It's Jaden and Mitch with the Blitz. You may have found us through our Instagram or through our podcast, or maybe this is the first you're seeing of us. But today we're starting a YouTube channel. It's our first YouTube video with the NFL season coming to a close. Draft season's ramping up, free agency's ramping up. So we're going to try and put out a lot of content for you guys. So real quick, just be sure to like and subscribe. Check out our socials at BlitzPod. I'll probably put them somewhere up here. And let's just get started. The 2021 redraft. This is the second time we recorded this because I screwed up and recorded the Zoom call with just Mitchell's face in it instead of both of our faces. And, you know, it is what it is. I'm sorry. If this sounds like boring content, just don't subscribe. I'm sorry. I totally understand. But with that, let's just get started. Mitchell, how are you doing?
I'm doing good today. I'm ready to see what teams could have done better last year between our expert analysis here from a fan standpoint and having a full year under our belts of seeing these players play.
Yeah, like Mitchell alluded to and I alluded to, we'll be doing a 2021 redraft where we kind of redo it. You know, we see what we saw last year, this past season. A lot of guys, a lot of great young players that we saw come out of this past class. Jamar Chase, Micah Parsons, going to be taking a jump here. You'll find out where to in a couple minutes. But the way we're doing this, Mitchell's going to take odds. I'm going to take evens. Mitchell's a Chargers fan. They pick at 13. I'm a Steelers fan. They pick at 24. I think that's it. I think that's all we had to do prefacing it. And we can just get started with Jacksonville on the clock at number 1.
All right. Well, just not going to try to overthink this one too much. Going to stick with Trevor Lawrence. None of the quarterbacks really showed out, and Jacksonville was pretty much in desperate need at this point. Trevor Lawrence is still the golden boy because he was alluded to as pretty much being the best prospect since Andrew Luck, maybe even better coming out of college. And we haven't really gotten to see him in a functional system. He played a full year with Urban Meyer pretty much, and almost no one could succeed in that offense. So you got to give him a second chance at this point. And I don't see them not taking him at 1 if they were in the same position, having this full year under their belt.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you there. I've talked about it before. They took away his running back. The only thing he had is his running game. They took that away from him with James Robinson. Had no wide receiver help, had no offensive line help. How do you expect him to succeed? Like any other quarterback, given just that scenario, is going to be screwed. And Urban Meyer happened. That whole situation with all that unfolding, I think this is 100% the right pick. You know, you could think Chase, you could think Parsons, but you still have a generational blue chip prospect on the board. You got to take him. So that moves me on to number 2 with the Jets. And we're going to see another pick that happened in real life with Zach Wilson. I still think this is the right pick. He really started to come on towards the end of the season once he came back from that ankle injury. I think he's the right pick. They don't really have any other options at quarterback. Darnold would already be gone at this point. And let's just be honest. I mean, Jacksonville, New York, those aren't any options that are going to bring in, you know, bridge quarterbacks or something like that. No one's going to want to come and play there. You know, what destination team, all that, they don't have it right now. So you got to take a quarterback here. I think Zach Wilson's 100% the right pick.
I mean, they do have legend Mike White on the bench, but still can't argue with you about Zach Wilson. He definitely had his flashes of what we all thought he would be coming out of college. I mean, everybody's seen that off canvas throw that he made across his body, like 40 yards on a dime on his pro day. He's still got the athletic intangibles. And just like Lawrence, it's a crappy situation. They really didn't have a chance to prove themselves with horrible teams, which is what's going to happen to a lot of these first and second overall picks at quarterback. And with that, it leads me to the 49ers pick. With this one, they initially went with Trey Lance, and we're going to see our first switch up from what initially happened. I think that in a perfect world, Jimmy G would stay there if they don't draft Trey Lance. So going forward, we're going to assume Jimmy G's there. And the one thing I think they needed to truly improve on was, even with Deebo Samuel there and George Kittle, they just needed a little more offensive firepower. So that's why I'm going to go with Jamar Chase, because he looked like the best wide receiver rookie in the history of the NFL. And this isn't miles above what Calvin Johnson did his first year. And he was a freak coming out of college. Granted, he had a horrible quarterback situation which Jamar Chase didn't really struggle with. But you could argue Micah Parsons here, but that defense was pretty stout, and I wasn't really worried about their defense letting them down, even though they did let them down in the NFC title game. But Jimmy G also let them down because all you had to do was pretty much pay attention to two guys the entire game.
Yeah, I think there's two guys you can make an argument for here. And it's Micah Parsons and it's Kyle Pitts. And I know Kyle Pitts is weird because you've got Kittle, but Kyle Pitts is so versatile. You can use him so many other places if you need to. And then Micah Parsons, I mean, the thing that I thought of if I were to have this pick would be you either have Micah Parsons edge rush alongside Nick Bosa, or you have him stand next to Fred Warner. Like that is just, and you could do both. He's that good. I love Micah Parsons as a player, like fantastic, obviously fantastic rookie season, but Jamar Chase plugged into that offense with Kittle, with Debo, with Ayuk, who's, he also started to come on towards the end of the season. Obviously, Elijah Mitchell, if we're actually redrafting this, probably doesn't fall all the way to the 6th round to San Francisco, but they still have running backs in San Francisco. You can funnel anybody in at running back and they'd be successful. So I love the Jamar Chase pick here. I think that makes that offense absolutely dynamite, which moves me on to number 4, Atlanta Falcons. They initially went Kyle Pitts here. This time they're going to take Justin Fields to sit behind Matt Ryan for a little bit. I think this is the right move because you look at this quarterback class, it's not there. Everybody in this quarterback class, this 2022 class, would be QB6 in this 2021 class. There's just not a quarterback option good enough for Atlanta to take this year. And that means you're going into another season with Matt Ryan. Once again, I know you're devoid of playmakers on offense. And I could totally understand if you say, you know what, we want to stick with Kyle Pitts, but Justin Fields is a very, very good quarterback prospect. He's probably QB1 in a lot of classes. And he wasn't fantastic in Chicago, but he did show flashes. And he's just got those elite traits that, Mac Jones maybe doesn't have. And he played at the level of competition that Trey Lance didn't. So I think he's the best quarterback available here. And I think he's the best pick for Atlanta.
Yeah, like you said, there's not a lot of talent in this class here. And somehow the Falcons have a further back pick with almost no talent this year, which is weird enough to think about. And they can't rely on Matt Ryan much longer. He is just aging and aging. It's only a matter of time before they cut or trade him. And I think this past year was the best time for them to try to develop a quarterback rather than get a playmaker like Kyle Pitts. Granted, they could draft just about anything, and it would probably help their team in the top 10 picks at any point. But I can't argue with you much on Justin Fields there. And with that leads me to the Cincinnati Bengals pick. And I'm going to take a position that they were clearly in need of at the Super Bowl, because even though Jamar Chase may have been wide open on that play, Joe Burrow was going to the ground while he was wide open. And I'm going to switch it up on the left tackle who went first in the draft. And I'm going to say Rashawn Slater goes at this pick because he showed through and through that he is going to be a stout left tackle in this league for years to come. This isn't a homer pick coming from me. This is more of a talent test, eyesight, PFF. I don't know, you name it. Pretty much they say Slater did better than Sewell this year. So I'm going to stick with Slater on this.
Yeah, and that was obviously the question was pre-draft was, do you go Sewell, protect Burrow, or do you give him another weapon? And Jamar Chase, that was his boy. They went to college together. They put up the most historical offensive season the college football has ever seen. And they go Chase, and it looks great for the entire season. I mean, Chase wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. And then the meme that we saw preseason, probably even pre-draft, with anybody blocking, throwing to Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow gets sacked. Anybody catching with Penei Sewell blocking as a touchdown. And we saw it on the last play of the Super Bowl with Jamar Chase. Jalen Ramsey falls down. Jamar Chase wide open, game's on the line, and Joe Burrow's getting hit by Aaron Donald. I don't think Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater, for that matter, are really doing anything for Aaron Donald, but Joe Burrow was sacked more than any quarterback this year. I think adding a Rashawn Slater, especially with Jamar Chase off the board, makes the most sense. Moving on to number 6, we have the Miami Dolphins taking Micah Parsons. I love this, especially for arguably the best player in this class to fall to 6 to Miami. They need defensive help. They need edge rush. They need some kind of pass rush. And you can use him in multiple different spots. Obviously, that's been talked about at great length. Maybe in Miami he doesn't get used at pass rush, and this doesn't look like as great of a pick. But I just love him here, and the upside of a Fields, a Lawrence, a Wilson is gone. Sewell's there at 6, and you could definitely think about that. But I think Parsons, after what we've seen, is just way too much of a talent to pass up on.
Yeah, my only argument would be Penny Sewell because he's just a monster on the offensive line still, and Tua was constantly under duress this past season. But Micah Parsons, slam dunk pick no matter what. He's a generational talent through and through. And speaking of Penny Sewell, he was initially drafted this number 7 pick to the Detroit Lions. And you know what? I'm going to stick with it because they solidified their offensive line with this. And that is a massive thing to build off of for years to come for a team that's obviously in a rebuild right now. And you just don't want to overthink it. You might want to think about going for talent like Kyle Pitts, but they already have TJ Hawkinson. So I'm going to stick with their initial pick here at Penny Sewell.
Yeah, I think this is the right pick because I think the way that Dan Campbell wants to build this team is to build from the trenches out. And they've got great players in the trenches now. You've got Romeo Aquara, you've got Frank Ragnow at center, Taylor Decker. You've got guys there. And you have some playmakers like Hawkinson's there. You have Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown broke out. Maybe I doubt he ends up in Detroit after what we saw towards the end of the season with this redraft format. But you can find those guys later. You're not going to find a Penei Sewell in the 2nd or 3rd round. Like that's just not going to happen. He's too much of a talent. And I think he's the perfect fit here in Detroit. Number 8, Carolina Panthers. They're going to take Kyle Pitts here. And this was kind of just a best player available situation. Kyle Pitts, by far the best player left on this board. JC Horn was a pick that surprised me when it was made. Like I was like, I didn't really think they were going to go in that direction. They have Dante Jackson there. Like maybe now we've seen they've added Stephon Gilmore. They've added CJ Henderson. Like, I don't know. I couldn't really understand the thought process behind that pick, but Kyle Pitts here, you add an offensive weapon for Sam Darnold to have. Now you've got Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Kyle Pitts. You don't have an offensive line still, but your 2 premium tackles are gone. And this is putting Darnold in the best position to succeed as best as you can without getting an offensive lineman. You got to go Kyle Pitts, best player available.
And, well, I can't really argue with the Kyle Pitts pick here because, like you said, there's no good offensive tackles at this point in the draft anymore because the top 2 upper echelon guys are off the board. And it's quite a bit of a reach for any of the other guys. And giving Darnold anything he can to build in that offense outside of Christian McCaffrey is going to do wonders. I know they have DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, but they're only so reliable when you don't have Christian McCaffrey on the field diverting attention on every play. So I really can't argue with this pick. They need to build something on offense, and this would have been amazing for him to fall to them last year.
Yeah. So with that, we're just going to recap real quick. We got Jacksonville, number 1. They're going to stick with Trevor Lawrence. The Jets are going to stick with Zach Wilson at 2. Jamar Chase going to San Francisco at 3. Justin Fields going to Atlanta at 4. Rashawn Slater going to Cincinnati at 5. The Dolphins at 6 take Micah Parsons. The Lions are going to stick with Penei Sewell at 7. And 8, the Panthers take Kyle Pitts, which moves us to number 9. The Denver Broncos, you're up.
And with their pick, I'm going to address a need that they still currently have. I'm going to take Trey Lance with this one. Now, granted, I don't think he would start immediately coming into the year, considering he played 1 game the year before and not in a major conference team. But sitting behind Teddy Bridgewater could do wonders. He's a great game manager, and Trey Lance has all the potential in the world. And just learning the little nuances of everyday NFL football, training camp practices, study sessions, anything like that would do wonders behind a guy like Teddy Bridgewater for him. And it would only increase his odds of working out because his potential is through the roof, and they're a quarterback away, like I said earlier.
Yeah, and you'll notice that a lot of what we're drafting here is needs that they're probably going to want to address this draft or this offseason, like the Denver Broncos. They're probably going to be looking at quarterback this year. We've heard the Aaron Rodgers rumors galore, and who knows if they draft one. I think they're all in on Aaron Rodgers, but if they can get Trey Lance at 9, like I love Patrick Surtain as a player. Patrick Surtain was my CB1 last year, but if you can get Trey Lance and he fits and he works, you're going to be good for a long time because that roster is ready to go right now. Number 10, Philadelphia Eagles. Originally took Devonta Smith. They're going to go with his Alabama teammate, Jalen Waddle. This is a guy that was a volume monster in Miami. I believe he finished with 92 catches, something like that. He was fantastic, especially for fantasy purposes. Devonta Smith was good, but I think Jalen Waddle does a lot more for your offense because you can just give Jalen Waddle the ball and let him work for you. You can let him be your offense. Whereas Devonta Smith, you actually have to have a competent quarterback, which the jury's still out on whether Jalen Hurts is that guy. Jalen Waddle, you can give the ball. Devonta Smith, you've got to get him open and then give him the ball and let him work that way. And I just think Jalen Waddle's a better pick here. He obviously had the better season. I think he's a better player than Devonta Smith, and it's still a position of need. We're talking about the Eagles taking a receiver again this year, even after taking Devonta Smith, even after taking Jalen Reagor, even after taking J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. We're still talking about it. So, we're talking about who they're going to need this year in last year's redraft.
I mean, now granted, they have 3 picks this year.
Yeah,
and
I guess.
They've only hit on one of those 3 receivers, so the need's obviously still going to be there. It's not like they're using one pick on it, but I agree with you. Waddle went before Devontae last year for a reason, because he has more flashes. They're about the same size, but he's just a little thicker than him, and he doesn't need to be that technician route runner, find his way open the way Devontae needs to. Way faster, yeah. And I no real argument there, because Waddle showed out on pretty much a talentless offense with all the injuries in Miami there. But after that, this leads me to the Bears pick here, the guy who the Eagles took in this draft. I'm going to take Devonta Smith because, frankly, I don't think Mac Jones would work in this offense. Their offensive line was horrendous, and Mac Jones seems like a great game manager. You give him the offensive line, he's going to make things work. He's just going to run the clock down, make the easy passes, and they don't have people to make the easy passes to. Allen Robinson was kind of there. If you want to say he was present this season, he was a dud the whole year. They needed another receiving weapon, because as bad as he was this year, if you give him another receiving weapon to divert attention away from him, you have Mooney as well, and then Devonta Smith on top of it. It's a solid receiving trio. I think even Andy Dalton could somewhat manage under this offense if you throw another receiving weapon in there like Devonta Smith.
See, now this would have been the Mac Jones spot for me. I would have 100% taken Mac Jones here. The quarterback is an obvious need. Wide receiver, you know Allen Robinson's contract situation. He's probably not coming back after this offseason. You got Darnell Mooney there. Is Darnell Mooney your wide receiver 1? Probably not. But if Mac Jones is there, and in this world, Fields is gone, all the other quarterbacks are gone, you're now looking at taking a quarterback in this class. And we've talked about at great length how bad this class is. You're kind of leaving yourself with 2 years of Andy Dalton. And that's rough. That's really rough with an aging team.
Well, they don't even have a pick this year, so
I guess that's true, because we are in a trade up scenario. Well, even so, you're even more screwed if you don't even have the option to go get one of the terrible quarterbacks in this class. So now you're subjecting yourself to 2 years of Dalton with an aging roster that's getting paid a lot. I would be all in on Mac Jones here, but I understand the Devonta Smith pick. Moving on to the Dallas Cowboys at 12. I'm going to take my guy, Patrick Surtain. This was Micah Parsons, and I'm sure they would love to have Micah Parsons here, but Patrick Surtain is not a bad consolation prize. Was very, very good as a rookie. Looked like he's going to be that lockdown guy, and there's been great discussion about whether or not Trevon Diggs is good or elite or what he is, because he's such a polarizing player. I don't remember the last time I've heard such a conversation about whether a guy is good or not. But The coverage skills are very clearly not there with Trevon Diggs, but the ball skills are fantastic. If he's your CB1, you're going to leave yourself subject to a lot of wide receiver ones burning him a lot. And we saw that a lot this season. But if you have Surtain on the other side of him to lock down that number one guy, you kind of let Diggs freelance a little bit, let him figure out what he wants to do, just go after the ball all the time. And maybe he develops himself a little bit better that way. Maybe his coverage skills get a little bit better with a true CB1 next to him. So Dallas Cowboys are going to take Patrick Surtain here at 12.
Yeah, I mean, Trayvon Diggs is the equivalent of the Office. Is she hot? Is she not? Argument. Is he good? Is he bad? No one's really sure. There's no definitive answer on that. But he was definitely pretty much on an island because he did not have a good cornerback opposite of him. And honestly, in this situation, you could hammer it with either of the cornerbacks that were at the top of the boards with Surtain or Horn here. So I can't argue with that pick at all because that secondary still is quite a bit of a need for them. And with that, that leads me to my Los Angeles Chargers pick. We initially took Rashawn Slater here, but obviously there's no tackles worthwhile here. And we have a lot of needs on the defense. And if in this redraft, realistically, we probably don't get Asante Samuel Jr. So I'm going to go with J.C. Horn. And I love the guy coming out of college. I'm higher on him than I am on Surtain because he was in that SEC schedule and he had to play against the likes of Alabama, against the top tier receivers. Granted, Surtain was going against them every day in practice, but Horn just shows all the intangibles that I wanted to see out of a cornerback. He flashed big time in the very few games he had this year before his ruptured Achilles. Granted, yeah, I don't want to hold that against him because it's an injury, but he looked amazing and everybody was slowly getting higher and higher on him before the draft. And he passed Surtain. I really like JC Horn and he would fit great in our defense.
As I alluded to earlier, like I was really confused by the Horn pick at 8 to Carolina. And part of that confusion came from, if you're going to take a corner, why are you not taking Pat Surtain? And Horn looked great. And maybe if he plays that full season, we're talking about him right now as going to Dallas or maybe even going higher because he would probably be CB1. Maybe if he played that full season, we'll never know. But I had a personal bias towards Surtain because he was my guy coming out. He played the full season and we got to see that. I just think he'd fit better alongside Diggs. I don't care. Who cares? You're not going to go wrong with either one of these guys. If you swap them, you're probably still in a very happy situation. Moving on, number 14, the New York Jets originally take Elijah Vera Tucker here. They're going to stick with interior offensive line, but they're going to take Creed Humphrey as our first guy moving into the first round. Was picked up 62nd, Kansas City. What a steal. I mean, this was a guy that was probably going to be in the first round. A lot of mocks had him going in the first round. I remember seeing constantly it was Creed Humphrey to Pittsburgh at 24. We obviously go Najee Harris, but in this one, he's going to go. You got Zach Wilson, and you're going to try and protect him now. This is what you do. You draft the quarterback. Now you try and help him succeed. You already have Mekhi Becton in place there. Now you add Creed Humphrey to be an elite level center, was arguably the best center in the league this year. And you add him into this offensive line, and now you're really starting to produce a good environment for Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to keep building that offensive line for your young quarterback. And Creed Humphrey, he was quite possibly the best center in the league this past year. He shined all year long. I think he had the highest PFF grade of centers in the entire league. So this is definitely a home run pick at 14, even if it is center. But they definitely need the offensive line help. And next up at 15, the New England Patriots. He's still here, and he's still carbon copy Tom Brady. So got to go Mac Jones. He worked out for them this year. He looked good. I don't know if he necessarily works in a different system that is not New England's pretty much set and pace Tom Brady playbook, but it worked for them, and I'm going to stick with it for him.
Yeah, I totally understand. I mean, obviously, if he's here, you have a massive need at quarterback in New England, and you take him. I still I get all your points about, maybe he doesn't work with a different system in Chicago and the offensive line's terrible. But I think this is a very obvious pick for him to fall to fifth, for him to be drafted here at 15. which takes
Yeah.
us to number 16. Arizona Cardinals originally took Zaven Collins, who was a shock to most of us, shock to I'm pretty sure all of us, unless you went to Tulsa, um, who got benched. Pretty sure he got benched like mid-season, maybe later in the season. Did not work. As of right now, looks like a bust. Little spoiler, he's not getting picked in this first round. He's not getting picked in this redraft. So this time, the Jets passed on Elijah Vera Tucker to take Creed Humphrey, but the Cardinals are going to take him here. You add more offensive line help for Kyler. We have this weird thing, this is probably about a week old now, where Kyler is supposedly unhappy there and questions about him as a teammate, as a person, whatever. But maybe another offensive lineman makes him a little bit more happy. You already got Rodney Hudson this last offseason. You now add Elijah Vera Tucker here, who had a very good rookie season. You just keep building this. You keep building this around Kyler, like we talked about with Zach Wilson. You build it from the outside in. You build it from the offensive line, and you build out. You get the weapons for him, and you just try and help Kyler succeed. So Elijah Vera Tucker is going to be the pick here at 16.
Yeah, like you said, Zaven was a bust, and they still are looking for this guard position in this upcoming draft. That offensive line is meh, nothing to write home about. And if they had just taken someone along the lines of Vera Tucker, well, he wouldn't here at this point, but if they had the opportunity, I'm sure they would have, because that offensive line needs improvement. You got to protect Kyler. He's your franchise player, and he could easily just walk out and play baseball if he wanted to and still make multiple millions of dollars with a lot less risk for injury because he doesn't have to worry about a below average offensive line play.
Yeah, a lot more longevity too. All right, just to recap 9 through 16. Number 9, the Denver Broncos go with Trey Lance. Number 10, the Philadelphia Eagles go Jalen Waddle. Number 11, Bears take Devontae Smith. The Cowboys at 12 take Patrick Surtain. 13, the Chargers take J.C. Horn. 14, the Jets take Creed Humphrey. 15, the Patriots keep Mac Jones. And at 16, the Arizona Cardinals are going to take Elijah Vera Tucker. Number 17, the Las Vegas Raiders. We could probably just run through this because this is Leatherwood.
Oh, no doubt.
Go ahead and talk about why you took Leatherwood here.
Because I hate the Raiders. Now, I have to be honest here. This is an imagination one, so I can't choose to screw them even in my imagination. That was a boneheaded pick. Didn't work out for him at all. He ended up moving to guard instead of being a tackle. So obviously have to nix him. Big surprise here. He's not going to make it in the first round of this draft. But I'm going to stick with a position that they did end up drafting and hitting on, except I'm going to draft a different player. And I'm talking about Javon Holland at safety. He was amazing for Miami this year. Miami actually made a lot of good picks this year. 3 of their guys are on our list for this first round. And you'll hear him later. Javon Holland made a huge jump. He was a second-round pick. He contributed in the blitz. He contributed in coverage. He was just amazing all around. And I give him just a notch above Trevon Moehrig as a player, the way he performed this year. Honestly, I was a little higher on Holland than most were last year. I probably would have rather had him than Moehrig. And that's why I ended up making the pick here, because he did shine through.
Yeah, I mean, Phil's a need. It's not Alex Leatherwood. I think this is a great pick. You can address something else with that second round pick. Maybe a better offensive lineman. Maybe I don't know, but great pick here for the Raiders, who really right now they need everything. So, if you want to go best player available, knock yourself out, and that's probably Javon Holland anyway. So, good pick here. Number 18, we have the Miami Dolphins. We were just talking about their draft, and they actually took Javon Holland, but here they're going to go Trey Smith. This was the last draft player that was taken in this redraft. Trey Smith was picked all the way down in the 6th round. Fell to Kansas City Chiefs of all teams, because why wouldn't they get two of the best young linemen in the league in the 2nd and 6th rounds? Why wouldn't that happen? Fell due to a heart problem, and just the heart problem hasn't shown up. I feel like when these like weird medical conditions, heart problems and breathing or whatever, we saw the same thing happen with JOK, where he fell and everyone knows he shouldn't have fell, but he did. And now we're seeing why he shouldn't have fell. he's been great, and Trey Smith has been the same way. Fills a need. Miami desperately needs offensive line. They get Micah Parsons. Now you get the opportunity to protect Tua. If you're obviously bought in on Tua. You fire Flores because there were some disagreements there. You're in on Tua. Got to protect him.
Yeah, you definitely have to go offensive line here. If they hadn't taken Parsons at 6, I would have seen the argument for the other guy with a heart defect and JOK going here, but they already have the linebackers position covered, and Trey Smith really shocked the world this year, considering his fall in the draft. And with the next pick at number 19, we have the now Washington Commanders, but we're going to call them the football team because that's what they were last year. And I'm going to pick the position that they completely flopped on with Jamin Davis. Didn't hear his name once this year for anything meaningful. And I'm going to take JOK here, a guy who definitely should not have fallen out of the first round. I understand you're worried about the heart condition, but when he was on the field, he just showed what he did in college. He didn't disappoint by any means. He's an athletic monster. He's everywhere on the field when you need him to be. And Jamin Davis was nowhere on the field where you needed him to be. So this seems like a pretty easy redraft pick here for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I remember going into the first round of last year and saying there's like 4 picks that I think are chalk. I think Trevor Lawrence to Jacksonville's chalk, Zach Wilson to the Jets is chalk, Najee Harris to the Steelers is chalk, and JOK to Washington is chalk. I thought for sure that those things were going to happen, and then JOK slid due to that heart problem. They take Jamin Davis. Jamin Davis doesn't really work well. He can't find his spot. Didn't get a whole lot of playing time towards the end of the season. And hopefully this offseason they can figure out what they want to do with him. But as of right now, it's not looking so good for the 2021 first round pick. Moving on, we have another player. We kind of had a run on players that fell due to injury, or like really weird, severe injuries too. This one's going to be Jalen Phillips going to the Giants at 20. He fell due to like seriously severe concussions. Like this was a guy that was talked about, like if he gets another concussion, he can't play football anymore. So he fell pretty far. I mean, I think he fell to 18 in the real draft. This was a guy that was getting TJ Watt comparisons and falls to 18. Like the talent was always there, but the head strength, the concussion holding off
head
ability,
durability would probably be the word you're looking for.
The head durability just wasn't there for this guy, and that's why he fell all the way to 18. But the Giants get him at 20, and I think this is another need. This is another thing that we're talking about. Teams, we're looking at the Giants potentially taking a Karlaftis and a Jabo, somebody like that in this year. They could have already addressed that with Jalen Phillips at 20.
Yeah, he definitely had signs of being a future great edge rusher to come, and Giants still need it, like you said. And when we look at the rest of the draft coming forward of what we have left, it's a lot of receivers and a lot of cornerbacks. And you look at what the Giants have, they have a good cornerback core. And the Tony pick was a little surprising considering they just picked up Kenny Galladay, they had Shepard, and they had Slayton. So it was a little surprising to watch Tony go to them initially when they had such glaring needs. And I really can't argue with the Jalen Phillips pick here. And with that leads me to the Colts pick at number 21. They initially went edge rusher with Kwity Paye here, but what I saw on the offensive end in the passing game really was a glaring need to me, because when Carson Wentz was called upon, he pretty much had Michael Pittman, a washed up T.Y. Hilton, and Doolin. I mean, you don't want your second true receiver to be, what was it, Adam or Anthony Doolin?
Ashton.
Because
I'm pretty sure it's Ashton.
Ashton.
Fairly certain.
Either way, I can't remember his first name. I know it starts with an A. I went for more of what seemed like a scheme fit here in my redraft pick, and I went with Elijah Moore because he can provide that more of a slot presence as a speedier guy while Pittman goes up and gets the jump balls on the outside. He could actually live up to be what they thought Paris Campbell was going to be when he flopped on his face.
Yeah, you don't want to have your wide receiver 2 Most people don't know his first name. That's not a good thing. If your wide receiver two has a first name that's not known by a lot of people, but I think Elijah Moore is a great pick here. You talked about it. We've talked about it. Pittman, you can't go with another big body receiver here, so you get a smaller, quicker guy with like Moore. Maybe Carson Wentz isn't getting talked about as being cut or traded right now. If you get him another weapon, I mean, maybe this team's in the playoffs. Maybe they beat the Jags in Week 18 if they have Elijah Moore instead of Ashton Doolin. 22.
Maybe they do have a first round pick
Yeah,
this year.
maybe they do have a first round pick this year. 22 is the Tennessee Titans. This was originally Caleb Farley. They're going to stick with corner, and they're going to go with Greg Newsome. He went to the Browns at 26, and I think this fills a need. We've talked about it. The Tennessee, this secondary, it's improving. It's got a lot of young pieces, but I think if you add Greg Newsome in there, who had a pretty solid season in Cleveland, just continues to improve, and it's without the risk that comes with Caleb Farley.
Yeah, and what I like about this pick is the fact that Newsome is the only of the bigger corners we had left. And what Tennessee's secondary kind of lacks in the corner room is height outside of Farley. So I can't really argue with that. And with the next pick, we come up to the Minnesota Vikings, who ended up taking Darisaw here, but he just didn't show me enough this first year. And the offensive line didn't seem to be a massive concern. Granted, Darisaw was hurt for periods of time throughout the year, but they didn't seem to struggle too much without him. So I'm going to go with another need they had, and I'm going to take Nate Hobbs. If you had put Nate Hobbs opposite of Patrick Peterson on this defense, that would have been a significantly better pass coverage defense because Nate Hobbs was amazing out of the slot this year. He was a complete shock. I believe he was a 5th or 6th round pick for the Raiders. The Raiders hit after the first round. Once you get past Leatherwood, they did perfectly fine in this draft, but that first round pick was hard to ignore, and that's going to be attached to them forever. But Nate Hobbs, an amazing player out of the slot for them.
Yeah. I mean, you look at this cornerback room coming into this offseason. Xavier Woods, free agent. Patrick Peterson, free agent. Mac Alexander, free agent. They've got to take a corner here. You've just got Cameron Dantzler on the roster. You have to take one. And Nate Hobbs really had a breakout season. I believe he was a 4th round pick, and he comes in and is a very solid starter. One of the only bright spots that we saw in Vegas this season. Moving on, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers at 24, and they're going to stick with Najee Harris, my guy. Dude's quickly become my favorite player in the league. Everything about him. I don't care what you have to say about, shouldn't draft the running back in the first round. Well, let's take a look at the other needs that the Steelers have. They need a quarterback. All 5 of the premium guys are gone. They need a tackle. Slater's gone. Sewell's gone. Darisaw sucked. Corner is I can hear that. I could definitely hear that argument. But none of these guys that are left, I mean, Asante Samuel's cool. Eric Stokes is cool. Farley's cool. Those guys aren't making the impact that Najee Harris made this past season. He was fantastic catching the ball. He was fantastic pass blocking. And listen, I know you might say that he wasn't as great running the ball, but that man is running behind 5 traffic cones with legs. Give him a break. He's not fast. And this was something I talked about. He's not fast. So I was worried about how well he was going to do running the ball because he doesn't have breakaway speed. But I think if we continue to develop this offensive line, he's very, very good. I mean, the dude was the leading rusher at Alabama, who's basically been RBU for the last who knows how long. He's a Pittsburgh. He is the definition of a Pittsburgh Steeler. Slept on the floor in college. I love this pick here. I love this pick. And so I'm sticking with Najee Harris.
The only argument you'd hear from me is maybe is Javonte Williams slip into this conversation, considering he was splitting a ton of carries and still looked amazing. I mean, his yards after contact was great. And let's be honest, he'd be facing a lot of contact in Pittsburgh.
And that's the other thing. Like, I'm so worried. Like, I'm so invested emotionally into Najee Harris, and we're going to kill him. We're going to absolutely kill him. He's not going to have a very long career because, I mean, he had the most touches of any player in the NFL, or might have been second this year, and he averaged like 3 yards a carry because this offensive line is terrible, and our offensive coordinator sucks, and no one's really scared of the pass with the 39-year-old Big Ben, who's now long gone in retirement. So maybe when Aaron Rodgers arrives in Pittsburgh, we see a little improvement in Najee Harris's play next season. We're going to recap real quick 17 through 24. 17, the Las Vegas Raiders take Javon Holland. 18, the Miami Dolphins go with Trey Smith. 19, the Washington football team goes JOK. Number 20, the Giants take Jalen Phillips. The Colts take Elijah Moore at 21. The Titans take Greg Newsome at 22. Minnesota Vikings go Nate Hobbs at 23. And my glorious six-time champion Pittsburgh Steelers stick with Najee Harris at 24, which means you are on the clock once again with the Jacksonville Jaguars at 25.
I secretly just took the odds to redraft for the Jaguars. But with this pick, I'm going to address a major need, unlike what they did with this initial pick, taking Travis Etienne when they already had a running back.
He picks a running back in the first
I'm going.
Morons.
I know. What kind of idiot would do that? Back-to-back running back picks. Weird. But with this pick, I'm going to draft a wide receiver for Trevor Lawrence. And I'm going to take Amon-Ra St. Brown. I feel like this Jags offense just needs that spark. And Amon-Ra came on amazing at the end of the year. He was I think he was the top wide receiver behind Cooper Kupp those last 6 weeks. Just about perfect time for fantasy playoffs for anybody that likes fantasy listening into this. If you don't, he was still amazing on the field. He still was a major impact for them. And he was a sneaky pick for me. I thought he had a lot of potential coming out of USC, and I was optimistic he would work out for some team in the league. And I think he did end up sliding quite a bit for where he was initially projected to go. You give him Trevor Lawrence, that is, a bigger body receiver than what he had in DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault, and he might actually be able to produce with a guy like him.
Yeah. The one thing I would be thinking here is Kadarius Toney, because they loved him a lot in pre-draft. And I know Amon-Ra obviously finished way stronger than Kadarius Toney because Kadarius Toney didn't even really finish at all.
He didn't finish.
Yeah. And they've kind of talked about using Laviska in that Debo type role where you just kind of get him involved and you let him do his thing. And maybe they could have done that with Kadarius Toney, but you don't really need two of those guys. So I 100% understand Amon-Ra St. Brown here at 25. I did see an interesting little thing today. Coming out of high school, Jamar Chase, or it might have been, it was Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson had 6 D1 offers. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 26. And this is the guy that fell to the fourth round, and he went to USC. And obviously Justin Jefferson went to LSU, so it's not like he went to some San Diego State, but that's kind of crazy. In high school, he was arguably considered as a better prospect than Justin Jefferson, who we now know to be a top 5 receiver in the NFL. So just a little interesting fact for you that I didn't have the first time we recorded this. Yeah. Cleveland Browns at 26. They drafted Greg Newsome here. They're going to stick with corner, and they're going to take Eric Stokes. Their guy, Greg Newsome, is off the board. Eric Stokes is still here. I don't really like the fit of Asante Samuel just because he's a little bit smaller and thinner, and Eric Stokes is really, really built for a corner. And he played pretty well down the stretch for Green Bay. And I think Cleveland's going to like him here at 26.
The only argument you could hear was maybe go Kadarius Toney or Bateman. But at the time, they did have Odell, and this was the team of destiny. Everybody had these high expectations for them because they had Odell. They had Landry. They had 4 tight ends worth throwing to. But they definitely needed to address corner. And Stokes, great cornerback in this situation for them. And with the next pick, I'm going to be picking for the Baltimore Ravens, and I am going to address the need that they addressed in the draft. I just won't be going with Rashad Bateman at this pick. I'm going to be going with the guy we've been talking about a lot, Kadarius Toney. When he was on the field, he looked amazing. You just get him the ball and he works. You don't get him the ball, he'll find a way to get open to get the ball, especially against Trayvon Diggs, who we mentioned earlier in the show. He put him on roller skates for 4 quarters of a game. The injury issue was definitely his biggest concern because he was amazing on the field.
I'm trying to get in a little bit on the post hype for Kadarius Toney. I really like this guy. I mean, he could get open in a telephone booth. Like he is so shifty. And we've talked about it with Jalen Waddle. You just manufacture him touches and get him the ball and let him be your offense. And as good as I think Bateman is, I just don't think he's that kind of guy where he can be instant offense, instant spark plug to get the ball and just let him go. So I 100% I agree with this pick. I probably would have had Tony going a little bit earlier, but it is what it is. You're picking odds. And I had the chance to pick him. I could have just picked him at 26, but so maybe I'm a little bit of a fraud. I don't know. We're going to take Rashad Bateman here. New Orleans Saints at number 28. There is a glaring, humongous hole in New Orleans for wide receivers. After Michael Thomas, it is Marquez Callaway and Deontay Harris. And, maybe Michael Thomas isn't playing for this team this upcoming season. We've heard many rumors about him potentially wanting out. And then now he's fine, but then he was hurt. So it would have been wise for them to go wide receiver. And anything is better than what we saw from Peyton Turner, who, while we've dragged Zaven Collins and Jamin Davis and Alex Leatherwood, Peyton Turner might have been the worst first-round pick because we saw absolutely nothing out of him. The Saints like their projects. They did this with Marcus Davenport. I don't know if Peyton Turner is going to work out, and you could get an instant guy who's going to make an instant impact, be your wide receiver too, in Rashad Bateman, and help whoever's going to be playing quarterback for the Saints next year.
Yeah, like you said, Peyton Turner was a complete no-show for the entire season. And so was Michael Thomas. They had no one to throw to. He would have instantly stepped in and been the wide receiver one day one, because Marquez Callaway, Deontay Harris, Traquan Smith, none of them exactly scream wide receiver one or wide receiver two for that instance.
You're really unhappy if they're wide receiver
something. 3. Yeah. I could probably take Traquan Smith at that because he's a decent.
I don't know, man. We're getting in the state of this league that we're getting to now. You need like 2 to 3 guys, 2 to 3 really good weapons if you want to be a high profile offense. And I know the Saints are pretty far from that with Taysom Hill at quarterback, but still.
Well, you even need a solid number 2, and they didn't have that. Bateman would have been that, but he would have been number 1 because Michael Thomas decided to not show up. And with that leads me to the 29th pick for the Green Bay Packers. They initially went cornerback here. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm going to go cornerback again, except this time I'm going to sneak my boy Asante Samuel Jr. into the first round. When he was not dealing with his 2 concussions throughout the year, he was amazing. He had great flashes really early on in the season. You could tell the concussions were bothering him down the stretch because, well, one, he wasn't on the field, and he seemed a little shy of making contact in the later portions of the year. That second concussion he got from making contact with your boy Najee Harris put him down for 3 more weeks on top of what he already missed, and that really hurt the rest of his season.
Yeah, I mean, if you run into Najee Harris, you are screwed. Like that.
Especially if you're 5'10".
Yeah, especially if you're 5'10". You were asking for a concussion. But I love this pick. I love this pick in the pre-draft. I was kind of surprised they didn't go with him. The only drawback is you do have 2 undersized corners in Jair Alexander and Asante Samuel, but they made Jair Alexander work, and they just picked the talent that was Jair Alexander, and you pick the talent that is Asante Samuel Jr., and suddenly you've got 2 really good corners, 2 really undersized corners, and 2 outside corners, which is, that is scary. So maybe you want to
as well.
I was about to say you try and get some size at your corner 3 in case you face a Mike Evans, because if you face a Mike Evans or a Mike Williams or one of these big bodied guys, you are in big trouble. But I love Asante Samuel, and I love him to Green Bay at 29. Number 30. I'm going to be ridiculed probably for this, but we're going to go Javonte Williams to Buffalo at 30. Yeah, I know that you're going to I could understand if you gave me a pass to take Najee Harris at 24 because that's my guy and it already happened, but the running back in the first round thing, I don't care. This is a need. Buffalo's running game was really slow. It came on late, and I was mocking running backs to Buffalo before, weeks 13. Prior to that, I've been mocking running backs to Buffalo, and then Devin Singletary really turned it on at the end of the season. But you get Javonte Williams in there with Stephon Diggs, with Josh Allen, with I mean, I can't really put Dawson Knox in that same sentence, so we'll just like semicolon and then Dawson Knox, Emmanuel Sanders,
Cole
Cole
Beasley.
Beasley. Yeah. Um, like that's a really, really explosive offense. And you go Gregory Rousseau here in real life or in the real draft. And that's a fine pick, but Javonte Williams is an immediate impact. And he really opens up your offense because that adds a running game that isn't Josh Allen.
Yeah, I think the main reason why Singletary was actually looking good was because they started to utilize Allen's legs a little more. They didn't have that play action pass as much as they probably could have with a guy like Javonte Williams, who's an absolute bruiser. He still showed up in the passing game for Denver in his limited work. He would have been a home run pick for them because they wouldn't have to worry about running back for these next 4 to 5 years, depending on if they pick up that fifth year for him. And Russo was fine and all, but their defense was fine until Trey White went down. And Williams would have made a massive impact for them. They might have been able to pick up some short fourth downs and crucial games there. But we'll move on to pick number 31 for the Ravens. They initially went edge rusher. And you know what? I'm going to stick with the exact edge rusher in Odafe Owe. He has a lot of upside. He's an athletic monster. I know the knock on him coming out of college was that he had no sacks that senior year. And granted, he didn't have a ton of sacks this year, but he made the massive plays for them when they needed it.
Yeah, I mean, I made because Maryland, we live in Maryland. We have a lot of Ravens fans, friends, and I made fun of all of them because he didn't have any sacks. And like, it's hard to find a compare. That's like having a corner that never had a pick or something like that. Like, it's just how do you do that and then still go in the first round? And that's because he's so traitsy. Like he has so many. He's so fast. He's so big, and we saw it. And there's an argument to be made that he probably should have gone earlier in this redraft because he was that good. And there were a lot of teams that needed edge in a weaker edge class, but I think he was the best one in this past class. I really like Odafe Owe now, even though I kind of crapped on him a little bit in the draft process because he was going to go to Baltimore. And, we can't have, Baltimore can't have anything good. They're not allowed to have any good things. But Odafe Owe is really good, and I think he's got a bright future, and he gets to stay in Baltimore here. All right, last pick. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This team is drastically different from when they were drafting about a year ago. This time last year, they had Tom Brady and they had the great receivers and they had the great edge rushers and the secondary was all locked down. And you're only worried about bringing back Levante David and Chris Godwin and you're running it back again. And now Tom Brady's gone. AB got cut, quit. That's all opinion. That's opinion based.
Retired mid-game, whatever he did.
Yeah. That's got to be the first time. I know we didn't really talk about this, but like Vontae Davis, that I saw no Vontae Davis memes or comparisons with AB. Like I don't know how that didn't. I feel like
he didn't do it on the field. He did it in the locker room.
But that's AB's way of doing anything. Like that's the equivalent of what Vontae Davis did because that's what AB does. AB does it big. I love AB. I still have an AB jersey. I bought the AB jersey after he left. I love that guy. He made me love football. I love AB, but he's probably cooked. He's probably played his last football game, and that really sucks, but it is what it is. But anyway, this Bucs team is a little bit more in shambles. Sorry, we went on a little AB tangent there, but they're a little bit more in shambles right now. So this pick means a lot more than it did this time last year. And unfortunately, because this is a redraft, the 31 best players are already gone. So they're going to address edge here. They went Joe Tryon originally. They're going to take Kwity Paye here. This Kwity Paye was the second highest drafted player or second highest drafted edge last year. He's really good. And he didn't show a whole lot of flashes in Indy, but he did show some. And, do you take Tryon? Do you take Rousseau? Like I could definitely see an argument for any of those guys here. I really contemplated Caleb Farley because you have three corners and their contracts are going to be up in the next 2 years. That if the Caleb Farley injury situation is worse, I mean, obviously, the back issues that made him fall as far as he did, and then he tears his ACL, which just adds even more to that. So like you could have waited for Caleb Farley while you had these three really good corners. And then when one of them leaves, you don't feel so bad because you've got hopefully a healthy Caleb Farley walking in, but JPP is getting old. Ndamukong Suh's getting old. Shaq, they did just lock down, but you need somebody on the other side of him, and I think that guy's going to be Kwity Paye.
Yeah, outside of Jalen Phillips, I feel like the edge rushers are all kind of in a dead heat. So you really couldn't go wrong with Russo or Pay here. Farley would have been a very interesting pick, especially for like the future going forward for them, because they are losing Carlton Davis this year in free agent. Well, most likely going to lose him. He's a free agent this year, and that could be scheming for the future. It would have helped greatly if Farley stayed healthy because their secondary was banged up for the entire first half of this year. But I really can't argue with any of the edge picks you could have made here, except for maybe trying.
So we'll recap real quick these last 8 picks. 25, the Jags go Amon-Ra St. Brown. 26, the Cleveland Browns go Eric Stokes. 27, Kadarius Toney goes to Baltimore. Number 28, Rashad Bateman to New Orleans. Number 29, the Packers pick Asante Samuel Jr. Number 30, Buffalo picks Javonte Williams. Number 31, the Ravens stick with Odafe Owe. And number 32, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers pick Kwity Paye. Whew, 32 picks. That was fun. I enjoyed that, even though this is the second time we've done it.
Yeah,
that was I still enjoyed that, and I would want to do this again with other class. Maybe if this video does well, we'll do this with 2020 and so on and so forth. Just to recap a little bit real quick of guys that missed out. We had Caleb Farley, Christian Darrisaw, Zaven Collins, Alex Leatherwood, Travis Etienne, which, maybe he sneaks his way in here. Maybe he's where Javonte Williams is. If he plays a full season, who knows? Peyton Turner, Gregory Rousseau, Joe Tryon, and Jamin Davis. That, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, every single one of those guys was picked outside of the top 15. And so we didn't have any huge busts, but we had 8 or 9 guys that were picked. Yeah, we had 8 or 9 guys that were first round picks that wouldn't make it back into the first round. We do this a year later. That really shows, I think, the importance of having a top 15 pick. If it hasn't been emphasized enough already, that is super important. You're never going to get, not never, but it's really hard to get these elite guys, especially at these premium positions, because you look at some of these, almost all these positions: Caleb Farley, corner; Darrisaw, tackle; Leatherwood, tackle; Peyton Turner, edge; Rousseau, edge; Tryon, edge. You had Jamin Davis sprinkled in there, ETN sprinkled in there, but those are premium positions that you tried to take later in the first round. Granted, it's a weak class for both of them, and they're misses. They're misses. Maybe, 3 years, year 3 is the prime spot to judge guys. So through year 1, they're not here. Maybe 2 years from now, they are here. But man, unless you're in a deep class, you might want to, if you really need an edge, you might want to move up. Or if you might really want to tackle, you might need to move up. Some other guys that we had just missing the cut, though, Christian Barmore, who I really wanted to take in the first round because I loved him coming out, and then he fell to 38 and I was shocked. I actually mocked Barmore to 15, which ended up being the Mac Jones pick, and then he gets to New England anyway. Azeez Ojulari, Nick Bolton, and Trayvon Morag, all those guys could have very well made it in here. Maybe just didn't find the positional need for those guys. But yeah, that wraps it up. 2021 redraft. Be sure to like and subscribe. Maybe if like I said, if this does well, we might do this for 2020. We'll probably have a 2022 mock draft coming out soon, some other free agency content, but be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to check us out on Instagram, on TikTok, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. And I think that's it for us too.
Yeah.
I'll redo that ending. But yeah.